I have a story. My story starts the day after Pearl Harbor. So it's December 8th, 1941, and I'm 15 years old. No, I'm 17 years old, and my twin brother is the same, of course. And we go to school, ride the bus, and we get there, and they're having an assembly. And we got to hear the principal, Mr. Stevens, read President Roosevelt's famous infamy speech, ending up with them, and we're at war with the Japanese in Germany. So that's the way things got started. But a lot of things happened right after then. Maybe some of you remember first of all, Jimmy Doolittle got 16 P-25s down in Florida and learned how to fly a couple of bombs off the Hornet. You know about that. We had an arrangement, our country had an arrangement to send 90 P-40s to England. When England decided they wanted some kind of adjustment onto the carburetors, and so the United States said, no, we'll give you 90 more new ones and do them that way. And those 90 we're going to send to Chiang Kai-shek. And that's how the Flying Tigers got started. And I'm pretty sure you've heard that story enough. So the other thing that was really important as far as I was concerned, that a 3-star general named Tully Spatz went to England, and his job was, he brought 6 fighter pilots with him, and their job was to find out how the British did so well in the Battle of Britain, so they could bring that information back. He also was looking to find out how to do communications with displaced military people. The Brits left a lot of people on the continent, and some of them were prisoners of war, and they had developed some communication systems. So when Spatz came back to the States, he went to Mount Vernon, the old George Washington property, and he built 2 buildings. One of those buildings, he hired a bunch of people to come and make escape materials that could be sent to prisoners of war in their prison camps. The other one, he got a bunch of people there to communicate somehow or another with people who were prisoners of war. So that went on, and that's how a lot of stuff that happened that I wasn't even aware of when I got to Stalag Luft 3. So I'm in the high school. I'm in high school. Raj and I are 17. So we graduate that June. We go to University of California. We're going to be engineers, and we didn't last there more than a month, maybe 2 months. And we both got in the Army, and they gave us an opportunity to take pilot training. So we were signed up for the class of 43K, meaning we were going to graduate in December in 1943, which we did. And we did get 10 hours in a P-40 before we left there. But then we were sent to Florida, and I was at Perry and he was at Fort Myers. We both flew P-47. And everybody just assumed, I guess, we were going to fly P-47s at high altitude, and we were going to escort the bombers. And we did some stuff in the pressure chambers that you probably know about. And Roger ended up going to Italy, and I ended up going to England. I went to New York with a bunch of guys, Maltby included, and we went to on the Queen Mary. We left there April 9th on Sunday, Easter Sunday, and we joined the 365th. Maltby got in a different squad, and I ended up in the 388th. The 365th had a 386, 387, 388 squadron. My flight leader was a guy named Harry Katowski, and Harry was not the most outgoing person. I think he had recently been appointed to being a flight leader. So one of the first things that happened to me was we're flying a mission shortly after D-Day, and we're down by the Brest Peninsula, and I'm flying his wing, and there's probably 6 other ships back here, and he just says, Elwood White 2, fly straight and level, and he's going to check something out. So he go down and went down right on the ground. Just dove right in the ground. And we never did find out what the hell happened to Harry. He must have found something. Years later, I and one of my daughters went to that area trying to find somebody that knew something, and we just, well, he's gone. But the point is, I lost my flight leader. So it just seemed like from then on, I was kind of, if you needed somebody, get Kling to fly your wing. So I had a lot of good time flying some really good guys' wings. I want to tell you one more mission that I was on with them. A guy named Murphy was a flight leader. We had 4 ships. We were going to go, I think we're going to someplace over by Belgium. And there were 4 other ships. There was 8 ships in the flight. But the weather was really bad. We probably never should have gotten off the ground. We could barely get joined up before we got into the clouds. So when we break out, Murphy's leading the flight. I'm flying his wing. There's a guy named I forget his name at the moment. I got it written down someplace. And he's the number 3 man, Weimer's, and his wingman is a guy named, we call him Esky. His actual name was Guess. He actually was a Alaskan Indian. So we're climbing up through the clouds. So we're all flying off of Murphy. Murphy's on instruments. The rest of us are just tucked in close. And we are really close because it's really dense. We get near the top of the clouds, and the sun is right over there, and it's right in Esky's eyes, and he pulls up under Weimer, and so I'm sitting here light on Murphy, and I look over there. Weimer was a ball of flame, bigger than this room, just gone. Esky appeared with all 4 blades back over the cowling and rolled over like that, and he was gone in the clouds. We found out later that he managed to get out and hit his leg on a rudder, and so he's in a parachute. He landed in the North Sea, 1/4 of a mile from a British hospital ship, who picked him up and took care of his leg. The problem was the doctors didn't notice that he had a blood vessel that was broken, and it wasn't taken care of. And in the process of them getting rid of him to an American force, he got some kind of blood poisoning and lost part of one leg. But still alive, got back to Alaska, had his own shrimp factory going up there, so he made it okay. I'm talking about missions we made, and right after D-Day, it was such a fun time to fly because you'd see all those boats in the water, you could see all the parachutes on the invasion coast, and all those gliders, and think, my God, 17 guys are in each one of those gliders, and each one of those parachutes represented some guy on the ground. So it's amazing how much stuff got from England to the coast. And we're fighting the Germans. The Germans are a lot like us in that they have an army and they have an air force. They call their army the Wehrmacht, and the air force, of course, is called the Luftwaffe. And that's important to remember, because when eventually, I tell you, when I was a prisoner of war, that had something to do with it. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit about the P-47 that you probably should know anyway. The gun sight is a light right in front of you that shines straight up, and there's a glass in front of you at an angle, so you see the white light here if you're right in a position like this. If you're over here, you wouldn't see it. And that light is your target. You put that light on whatever you want to hit. And you got 4 machine guns in each wing, 50 calibers. And you pull the trigger and you fire a burst of 6. And you try not to shoot longer than that. If you do, the barrels of your guns are just lost. And you've only got 20 seconds of ammunition anyway. So you have, it takes a little understanding. Fire a burst of 6. We started out, when I got there, dropping bombs and strafing anything that was there. You know, we'd gone over, the squadron or the group had gone over as escort, and now they find out we're bombing. So we were, when I actually joined the group, we made 2 or 3 missions in northern England and dropped bags of sand or something on the ground trying to hit something. And somebody had this instructions: you drop your bomb at 350 miles an hour, at 1,500 feet, at a 45-degree angle. When the target goes in the wing, you drop it. And then we started doing that in southern France, because we understood there was a lot of German equipment in the south end of France. They were going to bring it up towards the invasion coast, and we wanted to bust up the bridges so they couldn't get that heavy stuff up there. So we're down there in the southern part of France trying to bust bridges. We were terrible. We couldn't hit squat. It was terrible. So I don't know how long we did that, but some smart guy in our outfit figured out if we could put a fuse on the bomb, we could drop the bomb closer. So we have a 10-second delayed fuse on our bomb. From then on, we were so accurate, you can't imagine how good we were. We could put the bomb through a window, you know, under a tank. In fact, most of our missions, the second guy in the flight would talk to somebody in Patton's tank group, and we'd go to that area wherever he was, and these guys would pick out a tank for us, and we could lay the 500-pound bomb right under the tank. And we just did a lot of damage that way. Those guys really loved us, and we would stay there as long as they needed us. I'll tell you about one more mission. So, since I did shoot down one plane, and I'm sure that a lot of people who have victories, they couldn't have been any easier than mine. I told you I got to fly somebody's wing all the time. Well, Major Coffee came to town, so he's going to lead this mission. We had 18 ships up, and I'm flying his wing. And we're going someplace, and I look down, we're maybe somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 feet, and I can see, to me, it looked just like Spitfires or fussing around down there. And but there's still there's action. So I call it in. Bogey's at 3 o'clock on the deck. He says, check it out. Well, we pretty well understood you didn't go by yourself and do anything. You always went with a wingman. And I don't have a wingman. I'm the wingman, and he says go, so I better go. We're carrying a 500-pound bomb too, and we hadn't dropped that many bombs, so at the time. So I didn't want to drop my bomb to go down and identify it. Just done a bunch of Hurricanes or Spitfires screwing around, and I'll identify that and come back up and join the squad. So I'm tearing ass down there. And here come an ME-1 and I run under me, coming up the other way from a pass. Boy, his eyes were so big, and I can't imagine mine must have been just as bad. But I wheeled that thing around as fast as I could, and then I realized I'm still carrying a bomb, and it wasn't charged yet. I could still drop it without it going off, which I did. And I never did see that guy again. Maybe he just kept going. So I'm going to climb up and join the group. And I didn't realize while I was down there, a bunch of 109s had jumped the squadron. So I'm getting up about 5,000 or 6,000 feet and put my nose down, and there was an ME-109 right out there, right in front of me, about 500 yards. And I gave him a burst of 6, you know, fire a burst of 6, and the shells went out there and crossed like that, and he's right in the middle. And so I give it a little bit of rudder, fire a burst of 6, I hit him right in the cockpit, and I know I killed him on that shot. He peeled over and went down. So I get a victory with, well, skill, you know. So that was my victory. I want to tell you the next story, unless you're going to ask me some questions about getting shot down and getting in a prison camp. So,
how effective was the 50 caliber for strafing trucks, engines, blah blah blah?
Can you imagine? I'm 19 years old and I'm flying this plane, and I get to shoot up trucks and cars and everything else that's on the road. We knocked everything. If it was on wheels, it was ours.
Did you have armor-piercing rounds, or?
The shells were in various series. Armor-piercing was usually first. Explosive usually was second, and there was an incendiary bomb that you could see where your shells were going. That was another reason for just going fire burst of 6, because you had a pretty good idea where your shells were going by where the incendiary was.
Was it effective against tanks, the 50 caliber?
No.
Okay.
But we put the bomb under the tank.
Yeah. One way or the other, you're getting the tank. Okay.
Well, when you were flying to the south of France, were you flying from France, or were you still flying from England with drop tanks and bombs?
We're flying from England down to France.
Were you carrying belly tanks too? Were you carrying 105-gallon drop tanks?
Yeah, oh, no. In fact, we carried 2 1,000-pound bombs in a belly tank. And that's a lot of luggage. And we had a nice long runway in England. But when you got down to the end of the runway with 2 belly tanks, or with 2 2,000-pounders in a belly tank, that thing didn't want to fly. You had to actually pull that thing off the ground to get it going.
Was it Razorback? Was it?
Yeah.
Did you have the paddle blades yet? The larger paddle blades?
We didn't have paddle blades yet. And my instructions were, make that first turn, for God's sakes, don't get under 110, or you're liable to lose it. But I remember turning that thing up to 110 and kept it right there. So those were long missions for me. I mean, it just seemed like it was hard to get off the ground with that much stuff on it. And we're not bombing that well. But, you know, that was the mission. So,
what were the odds of shooting some, as a fighter pilot? Would you say just about all the fighter pilots ended up shooting somebody down, another aircraft, or would you say 50% of them didn't shoot any down, or do you have any idea?
yes, I do. But I don't have it with me, darn it. Not very many people. We had no aces in our squadron, or in our 365th. We had a lot of guys with 2 and 3, in my history book, I've got that down, and that, good point. I can't, not very many of us.
Would you say 50% didn't shoot anybody down, or
Yeah.
20? About 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Years ago at the museum, there was a gentleman that was a P-47 pilot, and he was telling me he was seeing Germans pushing these push carts full of vegetables or something like that. So he hit one once and it exploded, but he found out that they're pushing ammunition. So then he should have got in the back of a tank, and he shot it, and then he accidentally glanced underneath,
Yeah,
and that got it right there.
yeah. That's a pretty good trick too.
Oh yeah,
Bounce your ammunition off of the
yeah.
hard pad.
I just thought I'd add that.
The P-47, is that pursuit? Is that,
I-
if it's pursuit, then, but you were doing ground support, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think I flew 68 and a half missions. And I think out of that bunch, maybe 2 escorts. And one of them was a mass bombing, we had the Stalag Luft, where everything that could fly and carry a bomb went on this mission, and we dropped bombs at 10,000 feet, and the squadrons would just line up one after another and fly over this, and they had an area marked out with a green flare and a blue flare. Maybe the colors weren't right, and you dropped your bomb between that two. And when you got out there, if there was a break in the formation, you slip your planes in there. We did it one day, and we wiped out some P-47 squadron someplace. I don't know how many men we killed, but we got a bunch of planes anyway. So we did it again the next day. And I think those were terrible, that was a terrible mission. And if you remember that, what was a turning point in the war, the Germans were so clobbered by those 2 days of explosions that they kind of backed off.
Was that what they referred to as Big Week?
Huh?
Is that what they referred to as the Big Week? Was that in the
Still didn't hear
winter of '44? Or was that in the fall of '43? No, you just graduated.
It was shortly after the invasion anyway. Can I tell you about, I get shot down.
Yeah.
We're on a regular mission, we're going out to Patton, and we get out there, and I've now been, I shot down this plane, so maybe I got promoted. I'm a first lieutenant, and I'm number 3 in this flight, so I have a wingman finally. And I'm in the second flight. And the guy on the ground says that there's a big building, and they can't seem to do anything with it. They want us to get rid of it. And we weren't carrying any bombs that day, so the only thing we could do was strafe it. So the first flight went in and all hit at once, and I noticed that they lined up in trail and then turned and when they got their turn. So we were going to do the same thing, and when it seemed like our guys kind of got close together, so I told my wingman to hold his fire till I got out of there because the ricochets were coming up out of that thing. So I'm strafing down my strafing pass, and I'm halfway down the pass, and a small shell hits the gas line next to my foot, no bigger than my finger. Gas in the bottom of the cockpit. I know I got to bail out, so we flew with gloves, gauntlet gloves that went up to your elbows, and an A2 jacket, and flew with a helmet, wore goggles most of the time, and had your hand on the throttle as well as the microphone. So I just push the button with your thumb, and Elwood White 3 bailing out. Elwood's the name of the squadron, and White Flight, and I'm number 3. And that was it. I opened the canopy, and I got out on the right side as far as my legs, and I just lie there and I asked God to let me go. Gotta go home and take care of my wife, and I was free. And pulled the ring, and the parachute opened right away. And I remember looking up and looking down and hit the ground. And I was on kind of top of a little hill, and took the chute and stuck it under some stack of hay or something that was there, and started down the hill, and hopefully some of those guys might find me before, but I only got halfway down the hill. When I was going down the hill, I went to blow my nose with my handkerchief, and my handkerchief was just sopping wet. So my head had been burned. I knew my legs were burned, but I was wearing paratroop boots, but they were, my pant legs were burned off up to my knees. So halfway down the hill, 2 guys just appeared, 2 German troopers, both had guns and pointed at me, so I comrade. So they took me over to one of their pillboxes. At that point, we were between the border between Luxembourg and Germany. And remember, after World War I, they built, French built the Maginot Line, a bunch of pillboxes on their border. So the Germans built one called the Siegfried Line. So these things were mammoth cement rooms, 4, maybe 5 levels deep into the ground. So, these guys took me into one and gave me some of their cigarettes and their coffee, and then when nighttime came, they got me out, and we marched along in single file, maybe 10 guys in front, 10 guys behind me, and I had no idea what we were doing. And after we'd been marching a little bit, there was a big crater. Some bomb had dropped there, and they made it understandable that we were all to get up the edge of this crater. And I was sure that was it. They're just going to shoot me, throw me in the tunnel, throw me in the thing, and go. But instead, we all stood up there and peed. So we marched some more, and we got someplace, and a German captain came with a Jeep, and he had a driver, and he got me up on the back seat. He sat there, and I'm here, and he had a gun on me, and he had a dog, a big dog, and we drove. And I'm starting to feel the heat. My head's on fire, my legs on fire, and we finally stopped. And I think we stopped so that the driver could go get something to eat, because it made me go sit in a corner. And while I was there, a big-time German officer was going through, and he saw me there in my brand-new A2 jacket I'd just gotten a week before, and demanded it. And I was in a position where I would lose it, and I'll never forget that son of a bitch. And, A2, if you flew, you knew you gotta have an A2 jacket. At any rate, he came back, and eventually I get to Stalag Luft 3, or no, I told him, geez. Eventually I get to a hotel. I thought it was a hotel, but it was a theater, and they put me on the stage. So I'm in the on a cot on the stage, and down below, instead of seats, there's a whole bunch of cots, These people down there were evidently Spanish or Czechs or displaced people who had come to Germany to work in the war industry. And they've been injured, so they were in this hospital. The hospital was run by a doctor who was a French veterinarian. And I still didn't speak French yet, but he told me I'd ask him about my face, and he'd say, "Comment ci, comment ça?" Comment ci, comment ça? Well, I am just on fire now. My head is just feels like it's burning, and my legs feel the same way. They wrapped me up with a pink gauze, and the pain went away. Just turned it off. It was amazing. And so I'm there for at least, well, they didn't unwrap the bandages for 2 or 3 days. So when they finally did, they took all the new skin off my legs. So it started all over again. So with no skin, the blood runs out of your body. I could stand here and make a puddle of blood in less than a minute. So I had to get wrapped up, and I stayed there for I don't know how long, at least 2 weeks, maybe probably even longer. And I didn't walk in. I stayed in a horizontal position that whole time, and they rewrapped the legs and my face every day. So when I could finally walk and not leave a trail, some German guard came and got me and took me to Stalag Luft. Stalag Luft was the interrogation center, and they put you in solitary confinement, and then the guy comes and gets you every day, and they take you in and ask you questions and talk to you about it. And this guy has got a reputation for being a nice guy, and that's what he was as far as I was concerned. He saw me the first day. First, they put you in solitary confinement, and then they bring you out for this interview. But he didn't spend much time with me, and that happened 3 times. And I'm pretty sure the reason he didn't fool around with me was that he knew when he knew my time when I got shot down, so I couldn't know a hell of a lot. And time had gone by. I'd been laying in that hospital. And the other reason is burnt hair and burnt skin smell pretty bad. And he didn't like me. You know, he's not going to get anything from this smelly guy. So send him off. So I'm getting sent to a prison camp. So this is a Luftwaffe prison camp, not a Wehrmacht camp. And the big difference, I think, is that Hermann Göring, pilot, World War I ace, big time, now number 2 to Hitler, kind of took care of pilots. He didn't care whether you were French or German, Caucasian or monkey, as long as you could fly a plane, he was your guy. In fact, one of the nice things that guy did was he found a bunch of pilots that somehow or another got stuck in one of the prison camps where they're killing the Jewish people, and he was able to get them out of there. But Stalag Luft 3 was getting Red Cross parcels. And that was a big deal, because in the Red Cross parcel, there was a little pack of cigarettes, and there was a D-bar. And the D-bar was about that was a D-bar, about that size. And it's chocolate, and you could do anything with chocolate. But this was so hard, you could pound a nail with it. That was the rate of exchange. So I get the prison camp, you know, I still have the same pants burned off and no jacket, and so I was able to trade my boots for a jacket and some stuff, and 6 D-bars besides. So there was a bunch of stuff going on. The camp had all this stuff going on, and I guess I just didn't realize it. I'm still having a hard time walking. And the camp commander is a guy named Young, Albert Young, who was one of the guys that went with General Spath to England. And he knew the relationship between Britain and the prisoner of war camps. And at any rate, when I came in, there was 12 other guys in the same boat. They all got assigned to somebody in a barracks, because we had barracks in this camp. But for me, he sent me over in a corner, and because I don't have no dog tags, no shirt, no. He wasn't sure I was an American. And the reason I was in that condition was this was an afternoon mission. I had flown a mission in the morning, and when we come home, I had the afternoon off, so I had gone to the base and showered maybe, or had something to eat or something. So I went down to the line to watch them go. It was always fun to watch a flight go off, and there's my plane going on the mission. And the guy that's supposed to fly in it called in sick, and so I raised my hand to go. So I volunteered for the mission. So I wasn't really dressed properly anyway. But so Clark said, "You stay in the corner." So I knew the other 12 guys all got sent someplace. And I don't remember how long I sat there. It couldn't have been very long, but finally Colonel Hillman came. Hillman was the deputy flight leader for the 365th, and he'd been shot down a week before. He flew in his full dress uniform, kind of like they did in World War I. He came in the building. God, I looked up and saw this guy. It was like we were having review, full uniform in prison camp. And I'm sitting there in a pair of burned off jeans and a dirty t-shirt, and I jumped up to salute him. And he told Clark, "Yeah, he's Kling, we can keep him." So I'm in the camp. I get assigned to a room. I'm a first lieutenant, highest ranking officer in the room. Had one P-51 pilot in there who was kind of a problem. A whole squadron, or a whole flight of B-17s. At any rate, I'm the 13th guy in the room. So my bunk is 4 high instead of 3. Can we keep going? Are you guys okay? There's a couple of interesting things I think that happened. The war is wrapping down, and Clark called a meeting of all room commanders. And so he says, the way the war is going, if the Russians continue to go 200 miles a day like they are, in a week's time we'll be liberated. So if that happens, Kling in his room, I got a can with some dye in it and a cardboard, and it's going to be put water in the can when the bugle blows, put water in the can and open the shutters and paint these 4 letters on the shutters and then open them up. And every room commander on that side of the barracks would, all those letters would spell something in Russian, so the Russians would know not to shoot that building, and the Americans would. Okay, number 2, they're going to shoot us. Now don't forget, they had killed 50 guys that had escaped earlier, and just took them out in the countryside one at a time, shot them in the back of the head, cremated their remains, and brought their remains back, and the prisoners made a monument for them. So that's number 2. If that happens, we have trained 50 guys who've had some hand-to-hand training, and those 50 guys will jump the guys. The way they did that was they count us every day, and 5 deep, and we're in a line, and we're talking about 2,000 people here in there's 5 compounds here and 2,000 in each one. So it's 10,000 prisoners there. So if they come to shoot us, well, and this is the way they would do it. When we screw up in counting, they would leave, and then they would come back with 2 big trucks. They'd put the trucks out there and open the back doors, and there'd be 2 machine guns in each one, pointing out like this. And then they'd ask us, line up, we're gonna count you. So we lined up pretty good then. So we know they got the guns, we know they could do it. If that's what they do, they're gonna kill us. These 50 guys will go after them. Maybe we can do it. And the third thing is, they'll march us out of here. Hitler will decide to save all the prisoners of war as hostages, and maybe he'd get a better deal. And so if that happens, you're gonna march. And when you leave here, the only food you're gonna get is what you take with you. So you better load something up. So I go back to the room and tell everybody that we get ready to go on the march. So we're going to go on the march. But before we do, I want to call you back a little bit. The thing that I missed when I came into the camp in my terrible condition, I didn't feel like walking. I was not comfortable doing it. So when I got assigned to a room, I spent more time going to the library. They had a library there, books you wouldn't believe. You want an instrument, a musical instrument, you name it, there's at least one there. They had a theater, they had a stage. The Kriegies were living well. You catch the word Kriegies? Everybody know what a Kriegie is? Prisoner of war in German is Kriegsgefangener. And we couldn't say Kriegsgefangener, we said Kriegie. So if you're a Kriegie, you were a prisoner of war in Germany during World War II. We had a radio station called KRGY. Kriegies, yeah. So, nothing happened. We finally were going to march out of there. So we get the word, and the word came out on January 29th, 1945 at 10:30 at night with 2 feet of snow, and we to march. So here's 10,000 guys going down the road. So we marched for 4 days and 4 nights and we made to Spremberg, and they gave us a day off there, and they gave us some food and put us on trains the next day. We rode trains for 3 days. They just jammed you into, you're just lined up elbows to assholes, just crowded up in the building, and they let you out once a day to go to the bathroom. There's always some kind of humor that happens in situations like that. The first day when they let us out, it was down a hill and a grassy slope. And I don't like to go to the bathroom in front of everybody, so I figured I'd just go down and get away. There's a fence down there. I went down there and did my thing. And then I pulled my pants up and turned around and looked up. I'm going to have to go through everybody else's. Tell me, I was in the train 3 days, but I didn't go down in it. Isn't that terrible? So we ended up in a little town, a little place called Moosburg. Moosburg had been a prisoner of war camp, I guess, for years. But the one they put us in only had a fence and a water tap, and that was it. They just ran us in there. And they came the next day and dug a trench, so we had at least had some place to go potty in. And we were there until we got liberated, and we made it. We left the camp on January 29th. We made it through January pretty well, and into February we were finally starting to run out of food, and we did get some kohlrabi, whatever kohlrabi is, some kind of a big round thing that tasteless, but you could cut it up and gave you the sensation of eating anyway. And so by the time we get to April, we were not going to live through it. And somehow or another, Patton heard about us, and he got permission from the Germans to bring in food parcels. He got big trucks, big army trucks, painted them all white, got French drivers, and they drove American Red Cross parcels into where we were. Remember, he had a relative that had been a prisoner of war in one of the camps, and he even tried to liberate that camp. And the thing didn't work, but at least he had a sympathy evidently for us. So he saved our lives. There's no way we would have lived until April 29th, when he came with his forces and had permission to liberate it. So the one thing that I was really impressed with was the way the camp was the prison camp was organized, and the stuff that was going on. I don't know if you read much, but it was the thing that I missed, because I couldn't walk. The thing that most of the guys in the camp were doing is the camp was built with two big rows of big high fences, and then inside about 25 yards, it was a single wire about 2 feet off the ground, and you could walk along that wire with no trouble. But if you got on the other side of the wire, they'd shoot you, and they didn't shoot anybody while I was there, but they did fire their gun once in a while. But what was happening was, when you wanted to talk to somebody about anything that was going on, where was the tunnel being built, how's it going, it all happened on the circuit, walking around there. I never went on the circuit, and because I stayed and read books and just killed time, and so I missed a lot, and I didn't realize it, and it probably would have been in better shape when we had the march, but I did the march okay. I missed the boat as far as I'm concerned. So, because there was a lot of underground stuff going on in the camp. So, questions?
You said that earlier that you were doing a run where you had flares on one end and on the other end, and you were bombing planes or something. You said you bombed P-47s. Want to tell us your own planes?
Yeah, we wiped out a squadron, yeah.
Where was that?
Someplace in France.
So you had planes on the ground in France that
Yeah.
you hit. I just was curious how I thought maybe they were in England.
Yeah, they were fairly close to the front lines.
So when you left the good POW camp, they had told you got to bring food. Is that all the food you got through the march and for January and February?
Yeah.
So how much? I mean, you guys must have been loaded. You took as much food as you could carry.
I had a cigar box full of junk.
Just the cigar box?
Yeah. All it was, it'd been cooked, you know, all kinds of stuff. You put it in a pot and cooked it. Big glob of black stuff, and you break off a chunk and suck on it.
Yeah, but that ain't much food for 2 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
We weren't very heavy when we
You mentioned you were treated your wounds by a French veterinarian. When you were actually in the German camp, did you have adequate, or did you have some kind of medical attention from the doctor?
Not that I know. If anybody was sick or needed an operation, the Germans took them someplace.
So your feet and legs healed by
Yes.
themselves.
but I, not well enough to walk, and that's where I made the mistake by not walking. Okay, I guess that's it.
How,
So,
go ahead.
the April 29th, camp is liberated. And somehow you got up to meet with Maltby again.
Yeah,
How did that transpire?
well, when Patton came with the food and told everybody, you guys sit tight and we'll be back, and he was back. But when we were on the march, I found a guy named, there was a guy in my squad who got shot down after I did, Bob Baker, and he was in the West Camp, and I found him somehow or another on New Year's Day. And so we had all these guys in the West Camp lined up on their fence there, and I'm like up here with all the guys from the South Camp yelling at a 50-yard difference. I don't know how we made communications, but on the march, I was able to get a hold of him. So we're at Mooseburg together, Baker and I. And I tell him, hey, they're not guarding that gate here at all. You can get up and go whenever you want. Just sit right here. We're going to live here. But hey, the squadron's right at Castle. I don't know how we knew that they were in Castle, but we knew. So I begged him for a couple of days. Finally, he said, "Oh, okay." So we jumped the fence in Mooseburg and hitchhiked down to Castle. And when we got there, that's when I said, "Hey, Maltby, I got to get in the air. Just let me get in the cockpit, and you get in my lap, and we'll just take a lap." And that's when you get in the cockpit, and you get on my lap, and just take me for a loop. And we got out the end of the runway, and Captain Hill called and told Maltby, "Is Kling with you?" Maltby says yes. It says he can't fly, so bring him back. So it really ticked me off, so I went home. Bill said, "No, you can't do that." So that kind of ticked us off, and we figured it had no sense sticking around here. So the courier plane went from Paris every day to each of the air bases, and then back to Paris. I suppose it was mail or something, but I said, "Hey, let's catch the courier." So we caught the courier, we went to Paris. We ended up there on VE Day. The town was really crazy, and the Grand Hotel had been taken over by the military. So you went in there, and you signed in. They sent you downstairs, take all your clothes off, take a shower. On the other side, they give you all fresh clothes, and then you go up and you sign in for your room. You get a key, and you get a pass to go on the train to Le Havre the next day, so that you can wait and you can't lucky strike and catch a boat home. War's over now, I guess you can realize that. And here's $80 for you to go spend. So Baker and I have been to Paris before, so we got the $80 and went down to Pigalle and had a good time. Came back in the hotel and had a nice good night's sleep. And the next day, missed the train. So we had to, we went and got our $80, got our tickets, went downtown, had a good time, missed the train again. We missed the train for a week. And so finally they started to recognize us, so we caught the train, went down to Le Havre. They got us out in a truck, and there must have been 50 or 60 of us, and a great big truck, and it was raining, and they rolled the canvas over us to keep the rain out. And got out over a hill. We looked down on Camp Lucky Strike. There must have been 250,000 guys waiting for a boat in the tents. They're being well treated. You know, I'm sure you've heard some stories about how well the soldiers were treated waiting for their boats. So we didn't want to wait for their boats. We rolled back up into Kansas, went back to town in the truck and caught a train back to Paris and spent another weekend. So then we figured we'd go home, so finally went down.
Did you, you got lingering effects from the burns that you suffered?
I don't think so.
Did everybody recognize, I mean, you didn't disfigure your face
No.
after everything? Okay. So,
No, I don't know. I don't have very good hair.
well, join the crowd.
Yeah.
I think you ought to explain who your brother was.
Roger went to, remember he got his P-47 pilot training in Fort Myers,
Twin brother.
twin brother. And then he got sent to Italy. Interesting, they took him, I don't know how, if it was a bunch of them or just himself, but anyway, they went to South America, flew over to Africa, and then got in the 8th Air Force, I think. No, not 8th.
15th?
15th probably.
Yeah, 15th.
Anyway, a P-47 group. And he had this training in this P-47, and the group he was joining had just come from the Philippines. And I don't know what they flew in the Philippines. Well, I guess I do know. It was that plane that was like a P-51, but it had dive brakes.
A36 Apache.
A-26, I think it was.
A36?
It's something like that.
A36, yeah, it was a dive
So
bomb.
all these guys, that was their experience, and he's had the 47, so he kind of fit right in. So he became a captain. He led missions. He flew 101 missions. He led the mission that dropped a bomb on Atlantic liner Roma that sunk it, and got the DFC for that, and came home same time I did, and lived happily ever after. Taught 6th grade science for 30 years.
Oh,
Talk about being tough.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine 30 years of 6th grade science?
that's worse than flying a mission.
Okay, Ron, appreciate the opportunity to tell you my story.
Oh, thank you.